Richard, do you know what an urban tribe is?
Well, I've heard of it but never really understood.
Well, it's pretty fascinating. It's a phrase coined to describe the family-like friend groups that many urban folk, especially singles, form in big cities like ours, New York.
Oh, so it's like a modern family bonded with friendships.
Exactly. What used to be traditional families, we've got networks of friends here. In spite of, or perhaps because of, our singledom, we've learned to create a unique support system through friends.
Reminds me of how I was met with smiles and camaraderie in this city when I felt like a fish out of water.
Right. I remember the first few scary weeks after I moved here. And then I found my tribe. It's deeper than just hanging out. These relationships shape us.
I guess it's about finding your people, right? It sure is a game changer for single folks navigating city life. It's beautiful in its own quirky way.
Speaking of urban tribes, I can't help but recall the time when Helen, my colleague, became a part of my tribe.
Oh, is that the same Helen from your sailing crew?
Yes, that's right. She and a few others became my support system when work became overwhelming, understand. It's almost like they were randomness thrown together, but a family nonetheless.
I totally get that. Bonds over shared experiences, eh?
Absolutely. You know, Richard, sometimes I think if it wasn't for my urban tribe, amplifying my joys and sharing my burdens, I'd be lost. I presume you have had something similar?
Totally, Liz. Mine was formed over dim sum and egg rolls. My cooking class buddies and I, we keep each other afloat in this city.
That's fantastic, Richard. We can't undermine the importance of these unique bonds, can we?
We absolutely can't. As singles, we may not have a traditional family around, but our urban tribes, they sure fill the gap.
Absolutely, Richard. So listeners, if you're single in the city, remember to cherish your urban tribe. Your support system is as unique as you are. Take pride in it. You know, Richard, it's interesting how matured the concept of urban tribe has evolved over time.
Exactly, Liz. It's almost like a natural response to the increasing number of single households in bustling cities, don't you think?
I couldn't agree more. When we think of tribes, we think of close-knit communities. But it's surprising how such close bonds can be created amidst skyscrapers and city hustle.
True. The idea of an urban tribe just goes to show human need for connection and support simply mutates in different environments. Our cities might not have the traditional small kin communities, but they've created their own interwoven network of friends, colleagues, neighbors, right?
Certainly, this evolution of urban tribes somehow reflects the resilience and adaptability of urban dwellers, don't you agree?
Indubitably. It's a beautiful adaptation, really. Like our food chains evolving from hunters-gatherers to supermarkets, our tribes have evolved from small kin communities to complex wide-span networks, and that's truly marvelous, yet so astonishingly perplexing.
Yes, and like you said, this bond is even more crucial for singles. We're moving away from the norms of nuclear families, but the basic need for companionship persists.
Undeniably so. I can't help but think how these tribes also impact personal and societal growth. Our shared experiences in a city dealing with similar struggles and joys, they certainly form a unique narrative.
Definitely. Urban tribes are indeed a testament to humans adapting and thriving in ever-changing social landscapes. And I truly believe these tribes are shaping the future of urban living in ways we have yet to fully comprehend. Speaking of urban tribes, I consider mine a motley yet steady bunch. It evolved over the years, you know.
How so?
Well, it all started with the girls I met in college. We were inseparably like peas in a pod. Then there were friends from my auditor job. We spent countless hours working late and naturally grew close.
So it was more of a gradual process?
Definitely. And as I moved up in my career, some relationships deepened, others faded. My tribe became a mix of old friends who'd stood the test of time and new ones who I felt an instant connection with.
You know, Elizabeth, I sort of relate. For me, it's kind of been about finding a sense of community that I missed out on when I moved to the States. My friends became a replacement for family.
That's such a profound thing to share, Richard. It's not uncommon, though. I think for many of us urban dwellers, our friends have turned into sort of a makeshift family.
Right. And the friends that I made at work became a big part of that. We'd blow off some steam together after a tough day at the warehouse. What about you? Do experiences like these shape your tribe?
Absolutely. The bonds forged in the fire of late-night project deadlines are unbreakable. In fact, some of my closest friends are people who understand the exhilaration and exhaustion of my work life. They are a part of my personal urban tribe.
And it's these tribes that help us maintain our sanity and, dare I say, independence in this city.
Indeed, Richard. Trial through fire indeed not only shapes our personal growth, but also our personal networks or urban tribes. It's an interesting journey of rediscovering yourself and building bonds that last a lifetime. Richard, it's funny, don't you think? The city's high on its reputation of being a bed of roses for singles. Bright lights, bustling streets, all the freedom in the world. It's seductive, right?
It's definitely enticing, but in reality, being single here isn't all glamorous penthouse lofts and champagne on tap.
Spot on, Richard. Bustling city life can sometimes hit you hard with existential blues. You live in the middle of an ocean of people, and yet you'll have days when you feel utterly alone.
Sometimes it's a matter of tackling everyday chores on your own, changing the light bulb or fixing the sink. Once I even stood on a kitchen chair to install a ceiling fan.
I remember reading somewhere that people living alone in cities are more likely to eat out or order takeouts. For me, though, cooking for oneself can be such a therapeutic process. It's almost meditative.
You're singing to the choir, Elizabeth. The art of perfecting a mapo tofu dish, the joy of exploring weekend food festivals solo. These little things can be the sweetest perks of single city life.
Exactly. You learn to cherish those small victories, like figuring out the fastest route to work, or hacking the peak hours to do grocery shopping.
Definitely. Also, let's not forget the sheer excitement of dating in the city. The power to explore and the chance to meet new people is quite thrilling, I must say.
True. Though it comes with its fair share of disappointments and hilarious stories. Don't you think?
Absolutely. Like that time I went on a date, only to find out that we were both rooting for rival football teams. Imagine the spirited debate that ensued.
Looking back at my journey, settling in New York from Boston was quite an adventure. It was two people's world turned into my own little universe.
Oh, Boston must have been different. You do tend to romanticize your independence until you have to figure out how to unclog your drain on a Sunday night.
So true. It was challenging, but from learning to fix a leaky tap to navigating the subway during rush hours, it was also strangely empowering. I learned to take life head-on.
I know those baby steps. When I first came here from China, even simple tasks felt like mountainous challenges. There were endless cultural nuances to understand, and language barriers to overcome.
It must have been tough, Richard. I can only imagine. How would you describe your first taste of freedom here?
Honestly, there was this overwhelming sense of everything new. From figuring out ways to stay in touch with family back home, to learning how to cook my mother's recipes. In my own kitchen, the first steps towards independence always carry certain bumps.
There's no manual to adulting, right? Yet somehow we make it through, one day at a time. Not just surviving, but actually living. Living the city life and embracing the independence that comes with it.
Truly, and that, Liz, has its own form of joy and pride. Being able to toast to our accomplishments, however small, in the comfort of our homes, surrounded by our urban tribe.
And that's the magic of single city life, Richard. It's hard-earned but incredibly sweet independence. Richard, have you ever noticed how over time society's perspective on being single has evolved?
True, Elizabeth, it's moved from, "Why are you single?" to "How cool? Tell me more."
Exactly. Just a couple of decades back, we would have been seen as vertices in the societal circle. You know, the single ones on the periphery, yet now there's a shift towards acknowledging and appreciating the single lifestyle.
The vertices, that's an interesting way to put it. Though you're right, there's an increasing emphasis on individuality now. Initial experiences can be overwhelming. I know it was for me coming from Beijing, but then eventually you figure it out. That process, though, that's where you grow as an individual.
Absolutely, it's in those moments of isolation that you learn and grow the most. But it's not always easy, and there's often a lot of pressure from the outside. Isn't it interesting how society still expects us to settle down, as they say?
Yes. Being single doesn't mean you're not settled, it just means you're comfortable with who you are, and you're open to experiences that life throws at you, without feeling the need to adhere to societal conventions.
What's your thought on the shifting attitudes towards dating?
Well, I think with the growth of cities, people are more open to the idea of dating around, even us being in our 30s. There seems to be this growing acknowledgement that settling down doesn't imply tethering yourself to another person.
Yes, the concept of settling down has grown and molded into something far more inclusive of the lifestyle choices people make. It's not about conforming to societal norms anymore, but about finding joy in your own journey and your own unique experiences in the single city life.
Industrialization, urbanization, education. These have all played parts in shaping how our society now perceives the single lifestyle. It's changed drastically over the span of just 20 years across different cultures and societies. What do you think has been the biggest change?
I think it's the acceptance that it's okay to be single, and city life just provides you the canvas to play it out as you like. And it's beautiful, really. That's what gives us our individuality and color.
Well said, Elizabeth. As individuals, we're more than marital statuses. We're complex, multifaceted beings with dreams, ambitions, and individuality. City life is where we find the freedom to be ourselves, no strings attached. And that's an evolution, I'd say.
Switching gears from societal perspectives, let's dive into friendships. Richard, when you first moved to New York from Beijing, how did friendships play a part in your single life?
Well, Elizabeth, as an immigrant, the city was overwhelming initially. I started with acquaintances at work, and from there, friendships blossomed. My friends became my lifelines in this ocean of uncertainty. They made Manhattan feel like home. I assume it was the same for you when you moved from Boston.
Definitely. I was young, and grasping the essence of the big city was daunting. But let me tell you, Richard, the friends I met here have seen me through my best and worst. And these bonds formed between skyscraper shadows, they're incredibly special. I can't imagine navigating this city without them.
No doubts about that. It's powerful how we build our individual tribes in a city that houses millions. Over dumplings or pizza, shared commutes or weekend soccer games, you end up forming bonds that are both unique and necessary. Any personal anecdotes on the importance of friendships, Elizabeth?
There's one instance that comes to mind. Just when I had started out with my career here, I came down with a bad case of flu. Tottering all alone in my apartment without any family nearby was terrible. But my friends stepped in, took care of me as though we were blood relations. That's when I really realized the vitality of these ties. I bet you've had some friendship moments yourself, Richard.
I remember vividly. During my first Thanksgiving away from my family in Beijing, my friends organized a special transplants Thanksgiving for the ones who didn't have family around. The companionship we shared, it made up for the nostalgia and loneliness. So you're right, it's not about being blood-related, it's about being there for each other. A different kind of family, I'd say.
That's the perfect way to put it, an alternative family. Whether it's whiling away hours at a favorite cafe or nursing each other through a sickness, our friends become our pillars in this city of glass and steel. As a city single, these friendships are our urban tribes, our chosen families, and that's crucial to remember. Isn't it liberating, Richard, the whole living solo thing?
Oh, it totally is, Elizabeth. The freedom, the independence, it's unbeatable.
Yeah, and it's not just about not having to share the remote control. It's about exploring yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses. There's a certain self-awareness that comes from living alone that's just hard to replicate.
I can echo the same sentiment. You know, the casual weekend where I decide to try a new dumpling recipe just because I feel like it, no need to run by anyone or justify why I want to do it, that's quite liberating.
You're right. This individuality and freedom allows for such spontaneous instances, and living alone gives us the time and space for this self-discovery. Have you ever caught yourself in moments of surprise like, so this is who I am?
Absolutely. For me, embracing single life and living alone allowed me to discover my love for cooking and writing, and to connect more deeply with my roots. It was this solitude that gave me time to explore these interests.
That's beautifully said, Richard. It's like you have a raw, unfiltered version of yourself, just waiting to be discovered. And the best part is, this voyage of self-discovery doesn't have an expiry date.
Agreed, Elizabeth. Being single in a city as diverse as New York, there's always something new to learn about the world and about myself. And the shared meals or evening strolls with friends, it's like a cherry on top of this rich, rewarding personal journey.
So, fellow singles, embrace this opportunity for self-discovery, for independence, and for the joy of creating your own tune in this orchestrated city life.
Talking about single independence, I can't ignore one crucial aspect that tends to worry singles a lot, especially for women who are living alone. Safety, right, Elizabeth?
You're absolutely right, Richard. The reality of city life is that safety can be a major concern. But luckily, New York has lots of resources available to help ensure the safety of its residents.
Absolutely, Elizabeth. Apart from the inherent responsibility we have for our safety, the city also has things in place. There are community patrols, neighborhood watch groups, well-maintained public spaces, and a responsive police force with an easy-to-use emergency telephone number. Would you agree?
Without a doubt, Richard. Safety has to be a priority, and cities like New York have that covered. But, regardless of the city's safety facilities, being smart about safety is necessary. That might include letting a trusted friend know where you're going, or using safe public transportation options, especially during late hours.
I couldn't agree more, Elizabeth. Those are some great tips. Additionally, I'd like to highlight a few single-oriented organizations here in New York. Safe Horizon is an amazing nonprofit that offers free counseling services and support for singles needing assistance with home security.
Great suggestion, Richard. And to add to that, I want to mention the countless self-defense classes offered across the city. It's not only a useful skill to have, but it also companionship, community, and a sense of empowerment. Alternatives like alarms and security systems are always options too, with many of them offering really reasonable rates. Since we're on the topic of gleaning experiences from navigating city life, don't you think, Richard, that it's those lessons that turn us into seasoned city dwellers, able to handle the ebbs and flows?
That's true, Elizabeth. Like my initial months in New York, I moved here from Beijing when I was just a teenager. It was tough at first. New culture, new language. It felt like being thrown into the deep end of the pool.
Yes. I believe the unfamiliar can be challenging, yet transformative. When I first moved here for my father's job, I had to learn to be independent, to trust my judgment, to thrive amidst uncertainty. The experience shaped me into a resilient and persevering woman.
Similarly, for me, stepping out of my comfort zone gave me a sense of strength and self-reliance I never knew I had. Every weekend, I would push myself to explore a new neighborhood or try out a local food joint. It's in those petite gestes that I found my footing and embraced my singledom in the city.
What a great story, Richard. Do you think your love for food has also shaped your friendships here?
I'd say so, Elizabeth. Food carries memories, and for me it was a way to connect with people, something comforting in an otherwise chaotic city. As singles, we form our urban tribes around shared meals and experiences which turn the city's chaos into our home.
Couldn't agree more, Richard. I would say the same about my sailing experiences. They've helped me ride the chaotic waves of city life, drawing parallels between navigating a sailboat and navigating life. It's truly been an enriching journey and has definitely shaped my experience as a single person in this city.
You know, Elizabeth, New York isn't always as expensive as people make it out to be.
Really now, Richard? You've certainly piqued my interest. Tell me more.
Well, being in the city, we often get caught up in the glitz and glamour, but there are certainly budget-friendly activities. One of them is exploring thrift markets.
Ah, economics and sustainability rolled into one. Sounds like an adventure. How's your experience been?
Oh, it's an absolute joy. You find all sorts of goodies and knickknacks that are high on value but low on price. Plus, it's a great place to meet diverse individuals and maybe even make friends.
Sounds like fun, Richard. Plus, it adds a flavor of unpredictability, doesn't it? Each visit could present a distinct discovery.
That's exactly it. It's like a treasure hunt, but without a map. You never know what gems you'd stumble upon. One time I found a vintage cookbook with recipes from the 70s.
Oh, how fascinating. And here I thought you were born to be a gourmet cook. What about date ideas that don't hurt the wallet?
Ah, the age-old question. How to impress without breaking the bank. Here's a little secret. New York has a plethora of spots where the quality of experience isn't directly proportional to the price. Picnics in Central Park, movie nights under the stars, exploring the bustling food markets. There are so many options.
That's quite a revelation. Budget-friendly and memorable experiences indeed, Richard. What an eye-opening conversation this has been.
I'm happy to hear that, Elizabeth. I believe the charm of a city dwells not in its extravagance, but in the wealth of its experiences. And for a single city dweller on a budget, every penny saved is a new potential adventure waiting to happen.
So, Richard, considering we've spent much of our time discussing our experiences and sharing personal stories, how about we focus now on some practical resources for singles in NYC?
Excellent point, Elizabeth. One of my go-to resources is the blog NYC Single Living. It's full of tips and insights for singles living in the city. You've got everything from restaurant reviews, affordable entertainment spots, to advice on managing stress and time alike.
Oh, haven't heard of that one before. Got to add it to my list. On my end, I find Single and the City an absolute gem. The blogger behind it, Emily Smith, shares her own unique experiences as a single woman in New York and draws from her interactions with city dwellers to create an enchanting narrative. One of her recent pieces on the evolving dating scene was quite insightful.
Sounds intriguing. Sharing these experiences helps to build connection, doesn't it? Another tool I like is the Meetup app. It's not exactly aimed for singles specifically, but it's a great platform for finding like-minded folks, making friends, and establishing your own urban tribe. They have countless events and groups you can join.
Absolutely, Richard. Speaking of apps, Bumble BFF is a worthwhile mention too. It leverages the smart algorithm of its sibling dating app, Bumble, to help you make friends based on your likes and interests. It's a great tool, especially for those new to the city.
True, and let's not forget the community centers around the city. They offer a plethora of services from yoga classes to networking sessions, all aimed at fostering connection and community. A personal favorite of mine is the Greenpoint Community Center. Their cooking classes are a delight.
Interesting, Richard. Maybe your secret ingredient for your shrimp dumplings came from there. To add, NY Public Library offers some fantastic resources as well, from book clubs to language courses, fostering intellectual companionship. Reflecting on our episode's theme, growth, change, and resilience, isn't it interesting how we've both managed to navigate the city's complexities, Richard?
It sure is, Elizabeth. As city dwellers, we've grown resilient. We've adapted to the unceasing flux of New York. Our experiences color our outlook and the choices we make, which has been quite a journey.
And a rewarding one. After all, our single lives have been full of enriching experiences that have molded us as individuals. Even though you and I may be single in the city, we're constantly surrounded by our urban tribe, our circle of friends that are literally family.
Absolutely. The city life might seem daunting, but once you find your tribe, everything changes. They support us, lift us up, and make navigating city life less overwhelming. And being single in this city really means having the freedom to explore more, to meet new people, and build your tribe.
Indeed, Richard. Being in this city alone doesn't mean you're lonely. Instead, the city simply becomes a larger home, a shared space with your urban tribe. It's also a place to discover one's independence and resilience. Don't you think so?
I do, Elizabeth. It's akin to cooking. Sometimes the recipe doesn't work. At times you burn your tongue tasting your creation, but you keep experimenting, learning, and enjoying. And once it turns out just right, the satisfaction is immense. That's the city life for us, full of opportunities to learn, grow, and discover our individuality.
Well said, Richard. It's the tangible freedom that makes being single in the city such a rewarding experience. the memories we make, the bonds we form. They all contribute to our growth as individuals navigating the urban life. So, Richard, you and we've chosen to commemorate our single life in the city, and it's brought us far more than we could have imagined. It's been a phenomenal transformation, hasn't it?
Absolutely, Elizabeth. The city may seem intimidating, but it's also a treasure trove of opportunities. It's not just a place we live in, it's become part of who we are, haven't it?
Oh, indeed. We've each carved our niche here, fortified our support systems, embraced our urban tribes. This city lets us be ourselves, and that's the exhilarating part, right?
True, Elizabeth. And for those listening, remember, it's okay to be single in the city. You aren't alone. You're part of a greater community that grows, evolves, and supports each other, creating marvelous stories of resilience.
Yeah. This city is an open book with many stories. Many chapters penned by single people like you and me. It's challenging, but remember, every challenge has its thrill. Every journey is filled with little victories awaiting to be savored.
And let's not forget how tasty those victories can be, from finding that quiet spot in the bustling city to trying a new dish in your favorite restaurant or simply managing to catch the morning subway. Every day is a flavorful journey.
Every bit of it is about cherishing the personal freedom the city life offers. Liberties to choose, to create, to experiment, and most importantly, to change. Being single in the city isn't about being lonely. It's about relishing the chance to embrace these choices we've been blessed with.
Couldn't have put it better myself, Elizabeth. Living single in the city is adventurous, a testament to self-determination. It's not just surviving the city chaos, but thriving despite it.
That said, Richard, we should continue to celebrate our single city lives, to applaud the remarkable tribe we've formed. Here's to the countless experiences and stories that our city gifts us every day. It's never a lonely journey when you're single in the city.
Elizabeth, our city saga continues, and it's going to be one thrilling ride.